There's only one Kentucky Derby prep left. Who's going to win that one, and does it even matter at this point? Stay tuned. We got the top 25 Kentucky Derby contenders coming at you. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew DeSantis, your boy El Hombre here. We are here to once again run through the top 25. We've been doing this the last several weeks. And I think we could probably go ahead and clip off the bottom few here, Matt, since we're basically have our established top, I think we kind of know who's going to be in the gate, which is cool because we didn't know this a week ago. So some movement, not a lot of huge news coming out of this weekend. I think a lot of the horses we expected to do great did great. Yeah. And, a little bit of a mix this past weekend. So, Matt, let's talk about what did you see, first of all? What did you see this past weekend? There was 3 big ones.
Yeah, I think obviously we saw the horses. It's almost what we didn't see, right? Go Rocket Ride scratching obviously shook some things up out in California. Then you take a look at what happened out on, up in New York with Lord Miles, huge long shot, 59-1 long shot, winning that. That kind of shakes up who's going to be coming out of that New York circuit a little bit. But yeah, Bluegrass was very form fitting. The top 2 were clearly the top 2 with Verifying and Tapit Trice. So not a huge shakeup there. I do think the second place horse at the Santa Anita Derby that we're going to talk about in a little bit shook things up a bit in terms of what we might suspect. But yeah, listen, we have our kind of top 20 in the Derby right now in terms of who's going to be in the starting gate. But you mentioned the Lexington, one more prep left, and there are going to be defections. So some of these horses that we have ranked 21 through 25 and maybe not even in the top 25 right now might just get into the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby.
And that's the reason why we figured we'd run it back one more time, because there is probably a window of 20 to 30 horses that could still get in, just depending on, like you said, some of them are going to not make the trip. Some of them are going to decide not to, for whatever reason. Some of them might have a health issue that, is enough to have them pull out. But in any case, let's run through the top 25. And at 25, Jace's Road has been in the top 25 pretty much the whole season, and right around 25, oddly enough, Brad Cox horse. So I don't know is there much to say here. It is what it is with Jace's Road. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. And listen, he's distance compromised. He's a little further back from the, in terms of the rankings. It's going to take a lot for him to get into the final group. He finished 3rd in the Louisiana Derby, kind of had a perfect setup that day and couldn't really close. So I think he's a one-turn miler, but he's a horse that's tried hard on the Derby Trail this year for sure.
Absolutely. And Red Route 1 was pretty high on a lot of people's lists. I think we've talked about one of the better closers this season in this crop, and he finished 6th in the Arkansas Derby last out. Big disappointment. Yeah. Kind of a letdown. He's dropped kind of off the radar for most people, I think. Is there any reason to still be hanging on to Red Route 1 here?
Listen, a lot of things are going to have to happen for him to get into the starting gate because you're going to have to see about 7 or 8 horses scratch actually for him to get in. But the one thing to hold on to is he should like the distance. I mean, you mentioned that he's a deep closer. That 1.25 miles, he should keep running. The problem that we've talked about all Derby prep season is when you look at the actual field in the Kentucky Derby, not a lot of front runners. So there shouldn't be a crazy pace this year, unlike last year. So I think that's detrimental to a horse like Red Route 1. I think we saw that in the Arkansas Derby a little bit.
All right, coming off 3rd place at the Bluegrass, fairly, I don't know. I guess a lot of people had high hopes for Blazing Sevens. I really didn't know what to make of Blazing Sevens going into that race. He finished 3rd, a distant 3rd. But, he proved that he, I guess, belongs. And what do you have on Blazing Sevens?
Yeah, certainly a vastly improved performance from what you saw in the Fountain of Youth. I still am not really that sold on this horse, but he's got a fair amount of Kentucky Derby prep points because of what he did as a 2-year-old, finishing 4th at the Breeders' Cup, winning the Grade 1 Champagne, which are those early prep races. So even though he just got 3rd in the Bluegrass, that's going to be enough to get him into the starting gate. I don't view him as a very strong legitimate threat in that race, but certainly there was marked improvement, but he's going to have to take a pretty big jump again in order to really be a legitimate contender, I think.
I agree 100%. I can't imagine finding any ways to get him into on the board at the Derby, but Instant Coffee at 22, the Doral sired Brad Cox trainee. Listen, before that last race out, he finished 6th in the Louisiana Derby. Before that, he was pretty high on most people's charts. Can we
Yeah.
write this off as a one-off, as instant coffee, a horse that can bounce back and make some noise? I don't know. Matt, where do you see instant coffee personally?
He's kind of up against it here. He's got to wait. He's got to hope that 6 or 7 horses scratch out of the starting gate in order to get in. If he doesn't run at this weekend's Lexington, which it doesn't look like he is, so he needs a lot to happen in order to get into this field. I personally don't see it happening. And this is an example of when you put all your eggs in one basket and the horse doesn't run well. Now you suddenly have a horse that I think most of us consider to be a top 10 horse in this crop, just looking at the 3-year-olds. And he's not going to be in the Kentucky Derby unless a lot of people decide to drop out. And that's, on Brad Cox to some extent, because he gave him that long layoff from the Lecomte all the way to that Louisiana Derby. Yep. Had a bad day with no pace to run into at all. That was the most glacial pace, 1:14.3 opening 6 furlongs. And, just couldn't get it done. Yeah, I mean, listen, if he gets into the field, he's dangerous, but I just don't think he's going to get in.
Yep, and we mentioned it. There's 2 or 3 horses that were in that same circumstance that rolled the dice with skipping all those middle 50 pointers and just try to go for the home run, and it kind of backfired on instant coffee. If you're a believer, in any case, like you said, maybe I didn't see him in the Lexington probables either, so we'll see.
Yeah.
21 Sun Thunder. This is kind of the opposite story of instant coffee. He has not wowed anybody,
right?
But he's been he's been dwelling in that 3rd, 4th place every race. He's been solid, not wonderful. And my guy Kenny McPeak, we'll see. But what do you have on Sun Thunder?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's running everywhere, and they tried to get him in based off last week in the Bluegrass, because he ran in the Louisiana Derby, and then they come back in the Bluegrass and run him again, and he didn't run particularly well there. So I don't see him getting into the field as it is now, because there's no chance of him running this week in the Lexington, obviously.
No, yeah.
And again, he's going to have a ton of defections to get into this.
All right, let's move into the top 20 here. This is where things start getting interesting. Mandarin Hero, the Japanese horse, just came over. Let's see. Finished 2nd in the Santa Anita Derby, and very, by the time the race went off, I think people are listening to the bell of the frickin' Japanese invasion that's happening right now, because I wasn't super surprised. And by the betting window, I don't think a lot of people were surprised either. Mandarin Hero gets up for 2nd over some horses that I think a lot of people were high on. So impressive run here, jumps into our top 25 for the first time. What do you have on Mandarin Hero?
Listen, it was an incredible performance, considering he just shipped over last week. He got 1 work over the Santa Anita dirt. That was it. And then he runs his eyeballs out, runs a 99 or 100 buyer speed figure in that race. I think actually earns a 100 buyer speed figure, which is absolutely incredible. And this was a horse that was being billed, and I'll be the first one to admit that I was the one saying it as well. He was coming from a secondary track in Japan. He was not running in the elite company. But now we've seen Ushba Tesoro win the Dubai World Cup. We've seen Mandarin Hero finish 2nd by a nose at the Santa Anita Derby. Marche Lorraine won the Breeders' Cup coming out of that same circuit. So Japan's 2nd circuit is giving us a run for our money and winning big races. That should tell you everything you need to know about how good and deep the bench is over there. That was an incredible effort. He's sticking around. He only has 40 points, so he's on the outside looking in right now. He's 24th, so you need 4 people to scratch to get into the Kentucky Derby. But the connection said they're staying. They canceled their flight. He was supposed to fly out on Tuesday. They canceled the flight. They're staying here, and they're going to run in the Preakness. They're going to run in the Preakness if they don't make it to the Kentucky Derby, they said. So love to see it. I
think that was enough. He did enough there to show that he belongs in the Kentucky Derby if he does get a spot. He ran, second over Skinner, who was a little higher on that list here, but a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and he showed one other thing, which was there is this kind of perception that all Japanese horses are front runners, and he is not that. And I think he busted that perception that, the Japanese can only win when they get on the front end and kind of run fast up front. No, he's a closer, and it's not easy to close at Santa Anita, as evidenced by Skinner as well. But those two ran great races, really great races.
All right, at 19 out of the Steve Asmussen barn, Disarm, he ran 2nd in the Louisiana Derby.
Mm-hmm.
This horse is another one who's done nothing wrong, just ground out a nice prep season here.
Yep.
His arm's in the gate. What do we have here?
Well, he's actually not in the gate because he only has that second place at the Louisiana Derby.
I thought he had points from before. My fault. Oh,
no. It's quite all right. Yeah, no, he's not in the gate actually. And I think he's probably the number one threat that's not in the gate. Yeah. Because he's a super talented horse. He's going to need some scratches to take place, but he's really, really good. I like him a lot in this particular spot. I know he's not in the gate yet, and we have him at 19, but he's a good horse that I think if he gets in, can absolutely make the right trip. And he was the only horse we should mention that was making up ground on Kingsbarns in that Louisiana Derby. Very impressive.
Absolutely. And at 18, we had Cyclone Mischief coming off a third at the Florida Derby. Mm-hmm. And a pretty stout effort, if you ask me, especially if you're a person who believes that Forte is the best in the country, which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Cyclone Mischief with a very respectable effort there in the Florida Derby.
Yeah.
Where are you at on number 18, Cyclone Mischief? Too high, too low?
No, I think he's about right. I mean, he's another one that I think is actually second on deck to get into the top 20. So he's 22 right now. So he's going to get into the starting gate because there's going to be at least 2 defections. So he's going to be in the starting gate. I thought he showed a much better effort. He's a horse that could benefit in the Kentucky Derby big time because he can go to the front. And there's not a lot of front runners. We've talked about it. And he can absolutely take advantage of that and get out there and get pretty brave on the front end. And if he gets the right trip, he could really shock the world in that particular race. He's got talent. He's absolutely got talent. He can get the distance.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Cyclone Mischief. I think he's got a shot. He could be a horse that surprises everybody on Derby Day.
Yep.
Not sure if he's capable of winning, but definitely capable of turning some heads. At 17, Raise Cane, coming off a 5th place at the Bluegrass. Not exactly the most impressive effort. He had a little, he's one of these horses that had, I feel like he was the benefactor of some weaker fields earlier in the season. He did some damage there, which you can't take away from him. I don't know what I think of Raise Cane as far as any shot at the Derby. Where are you out on Raise Cane, 17?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. He won that really fluky Gotham, which was in a muddy track, one turn
horses
mile,
running all over the place.
Riderless horses that are getting in everybody's way. It was a bizarre Ben just don't really see it. And to be honest, listen, Ben Colebrook is a smaller operation. They earned the right to get this horse into the Kentucky Derby. But I root for him, and I like Ben Colebrook's barn a lot. But I do wonder if he's a candidate maybe to defect from the starting gate. I just wonder. And so we'll see. I mean, that 5th in the Bluegrass wasn't that great because really it was really the first top 2, then Blazing Sevens, and then you can kind of throw a blanket over the rest.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that was a quality 5th place or not, but in any case, like you said, hey, if they want to run it in the Derby, then congratulations. I mean, for some people, like I've said this 100 times in past videos, for some people, that's the dream. Just get a horse in the gate, baby.
Oh, it's any of our dreams. I mean, if you get a horse in the Derby, if Trust the Prophet's got a horse in the Derby, are you kidding me?
Yep. If I had a 1% ownership, horse that was in the Derby, I'd be acting like, the biggest baller on the planet, rolling in a limo with, whatever, gold-plated wheels. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to the Raise Cane group. So, at number 16, we have Skinner, who's also, we just mentioned him.
Yeah.
He was beaten by Mandarin Hero.
Yep.
I thought Skinner ran a good race. Mandarin Hero beat him down the stretch. You said he's a good closer.
Yeah.
I think Skinner, we're not quite to the point in this list where we're going to talk the elite horses yet, but Skinner's kind of on the outside looking in, and I don't think we knew a whole lot about what to expect. I didn't anyway before that last race. So we learned that he's legit.
He is legit. He's a horse that became a totally different horse as a 3-year-old. He ran some mediocre races, and I don't want to overstate things, but he wasn't that great. He was running in the 60s, 70s Beyer speed figure. Took a 5-month layoff from 2 to 3 and grew up. And he got big, and he got strong, and he got his endurance. And he comes back as a 3-year-old, breaks his maiden with a 94 Beyers, runs 3rd in the San Felipe with a 95 Beyers, and then runs 3rd again in the Santa Anita Derby with a 97 Beyers. I mean, he's going to continue to get better. And he's the number 1 horse that's on the deck. So he's going to definitely get into the Kentucky Derby starting gate because there's going to be at least one defection. So he'll get in. And he's a dangerous one. If there's any sort of pace up front, you see that curling progeny, he's going to like all the distance you give him. So, the 10 furlongs is not going to be a problem at all.
Anytime I see the sire of curling, I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
Race Cane, Charles B brings up a good point. Race Cane, the type of horse that blows up a superfecta. Yeah, that's kind
Totally.
of, I think where we're at with Race Cane, we don't expect him to be in the winner's circle or even close, but he may. You're right.
For sure.
All right, let's move on. Top 15. Number 15 is new to the list this week. Contender. This is another Japanese horse. He ran third at the UAE Derby.
Yeah.
A distant third, we might add, but we'll get to the winner of that race here in a little bit. But
yeah,
Contender.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to take him. Yeah, you got to take him seriously. First of all, he ran a distant third that day, but he won some other Kentucky Derby prep races in Japan leading into that UAE Derby. So he's beaten some very nice horses over in Japan. And if he's largely considered a better horse than Mandarin Hero, who we just saw finish second at the Santa Anita Derby, and he's got great pedigree. And I think, you look at a horse like Contender, he should be able to continue to run for days. He's not a front runner. He can sit mid-pack and go. There's a lot to like about this horse. And again, I think it just shows if Mandarin Hero was able to do what he did, then you got to take these Japanese horses super seriously. And you got to consider them legitimate threats. Yoshido Yahagi, one of the best trainers in the world. And so he's going to have this horse ready to roll.
All right, at 14, your shocker, Wood Memorial winner at 1,000,000-to-1, Lord Miles. And we had seen him. I think he was, at least at the betting window, a little higher thought of the race before.
Yeah.
In this race, he goes off 58, whatever it was.
59-to-1. Yeah.
Yeah. Sappy Joseph Jr. gets him in the winner's circle at the Wood Memorial.
You love it.
And yeah, you got to love it, baby. I mean, the Wood Memorial, I don't think anybody here was sitting here saying whoever wins the Wood Memorial is going to be the Derby favorite. We knew it was a pretty, pretty dark scene there in New York. You were there at Aqueduct.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, could Lord Miles, what's your take on Lord Miles? I don't even know what to make of it because I think the whole New York circuit is second tier to these next, 10 or 15 horses we're going to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I completely agree with you about your assessment of Lord Miles and the New York circuit, I should say. What I'll say about Lord Miles is this. He's a horse that I went back and looked at my notes when he ran in the Holy Bull. He was my value play in that race. I mean, I really liked Lord Miles. I thought he was going to be able to show you a little something. But he got stuck on the inside rail in each of his first two preps. And I think that just skunked him a little bit. And I remember making a note in my Wood Memorial card. And I said, escapes the inside rail, might show something more this time. Now, when I said might show something more, I thought third or fourth. I didn't think he was going to actually win.
Right. No.
So it's it's a great story for Safi. I think he's a huge long shot in this race, but he was a horse that was on the right trajectory at one time. Reminds me a little bit of a horse that we actually saw win a Kentucky Oaks prep this week in the Ashland, Defining Purpose, who was on a good trajectory, then got stuck on two sloppy tracks, comes back and now shows you what she can do on a dry, fast surface. Lord Miles feels a little bit like that with regards to, escape the inside rail, gets a better post position, really showed a gutty effort, beating just barely nosing out Hit Show and Dreamlike in that Wood Memorial.
All right. So that's interesting. That New York circuit is a wild circuit right now for me. I don't know what to make of it. I'm almost, when it comes Derby Day, if nothing else, major changes, I'm probably just going to be, no, thank you on the New York circuit.
Yeah.
This is too wild. All right. Let's move along here. Number 13. This is our boy Colin. I think it was his golden boy. Reincarnate, third in the Arkansas Derby last out. I like Reincarnate. I mean, I definitely can't kill you if you're putting him underneath. I don't think he's going to win.
Right.
Where are you at on Reincarnate out of the Yak Teen Barn? Go ahead.
I'm less bullish than Colin. I'll just say that. And I thought that Arkansas Derby performance was a little disappointing because he had excuses for finishing third in the Rebel. And you go, okay, listen, if he gets the brake cleaned up, he's going to have a better pace. He's going to get a better setup. He faced all sorts of trouble in the home stretch in that Rebel race. And then he comes back and finishes third and is easily beaten by Angel of Empire. And you go, all right, well, maybe that's just kind of the horse he is. And I just think maybe he is, an okay horse that maybe you can catch underneath in a superfecta, something along those lines. But I don't see him as a really strong, legitimate win threat in this race based upon what I've seen to this point. And sometimes with the good magics, I do wonder about, can they get a mile and a quarter? So we'll see. I'm interested in that, and obviously has been a very productive sire in this first crop. But I'm interested to see how they stretch out as they go longer and longer.
All right. And before we move on any further, we'd like to thank everybody who's joining in live. We've got a nice group of people online. Didn't expect it. This was kind of an impromptu live here, so didn't know what to expect. If you could please take a second and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more of these impromptu type lives, a zillion different outlooks on the Kentucky Derby and Triple Crown stuff coming up. If you've been paying attention to our channel at all, you know that Matt's putting out amazing content every week. We're doing a live drunk show on Thursday nights with a good group of people that we have a lot of fun. The Cocktail Lounge, you've got the Formula, Colin Sheehan, all bringing weekly videos. So
absolutely
take a second, please subscribe. And we're going to move along here to number 12, Rocket Can, who is coming off of 4th place at the Arkansas Derby. Another disappointment.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were finally sold. I think my take on Rocket Can going into the Arkansas Derby was, hey, listen, I didn't really buy into him before, but going into the Arkansas Derby, I was finally ready to maybe buy into him. And then he runs that race there. And I don't even like him at 12, to be honest with you, but go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, he's a little lower on my list. And we should mention this is a consensus list from the 4 of us here on Trust the Profits. So we each have our own individual lists, and then you do the dirty work of averaging everything together and coming up with our consensus top 25 list. But yeah, Rocket Can, I was super disappointed. I was really high on him in that Arkansas Derby too, and then just ran the 4th, and I thought, can he improve? I think so. But I also just wonder if he's a horse that's just going to run about a 90 to 93 buyer speed figure. I just think maybe that's the horse that he is right now, and that's not going to be good enough to get it done in the Kentucky Derby. He's an honest horse, I think, but I just don't think he's up there with the elite horses in this particular crop. But I think he's got a bright future in terms of like a grade 3, occasional grade 2 type winning horse later on in his career.
Yeah, he fully belongs in the field here. I mean, let's not neg the guy here. But.
Yeah, because we should say he finished second to Forte the race before that in the Fountain of Youth. And so that was really what got people excited.
All right, let's move to number 11, Confidence Game. He's running this weekend, right? I mean, is he still on schedule? Yeah. He's the one top 25 horse we have running in the Lexington at Keeneland this weekend, which is the last chance qualifier, I like to call it.
Yep.
We could see some movement in that field, so who knows? But Confidence Game, real big question marks. But at 11, somebody in our group feels pretty highly on Confidence Game, or a couple of us.
Yeah. Well,
spoiler alert, it's not me, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think Confidence Game, he's such an interesting horse because he goes and wins the Rebel and looks like $1 million doing it. He looks great that day. Now, he's a candy ride. They like the slop. It was in the slop. But he showed a whole new dimension because before that, the only time he'd ever won was wiring the field. What does he do in the Rebel? He sits 5th, 6th, 7th early on. He sits like mid-pack and then makes this great move and wins going away in a super impressive performance. And then Keith DeSormo, his trainer, says, we might not run him again until the Kentucky Derby. So he skips the entire last round of preps. Then all of a sudden he pops up on the probables list for the Lexington, which is kind of a bizarre prep to use because it's so close to the Derby. It's going to be such a quick turnaround. So I'm not sure what to make of him. There is talent there, I think, but I just don't know about if he's going to be fresh and ready to go for the Kentucky Derby at the first Saturday in May.
If he goes and runs a monster at the Lexington, I think he'll turn some heads. Otherwise, no thanks on him. Yeah. We'll see. Like you said, I mean, we'll see. Yeah. Going into the top 10 now. This is the top 10. And coming off here, speaking of the New York circuit, number 10 Hit Show. I don't know. I just think I still believe he's the best of the New York scene there.
Yeah.
Just based on consistency.
Yeah.
I don't think this horse is going to be anywhere near the board Kentucky Derby Day.
Mm-hmm.
You better be getting a giant price on him if you're going to bet him.
Yeah.
I don't know. 10, fine. I feel like he's a mid packer. Where are you out on hit show?
Kind of the same. I think he's a little bit like Rocket Can as well. He's going to run his speed figure. He's going to run about a 93, and that's kind of what he is, I think.
Yep.
I think he is a middle to lower end Brad Cox horse, but for that barn. But, listen, he won the Withers and he came back and was, this close to winning the Wood Memorial. And it's interesting. If he's 2 inches away and wins the Wood Memorial, suddenly we have a different impression of him. Buyer speed figure be damned. Because suddenly we go, well, he won the Wood. He won the, now he's one of the highest ranked horses in terms of points out of the 3-year-old crop. So, he was in a tough spot. He was in between Dreamlike and Lord Miles in that race. It's always tough to be the horse in the middle in those photos. He ran his race, but I just don't think his race is good enough to win the Kentucky Derby.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with your take on Hit Show and Rocket Cam being very similar. Yep. Mid packers, great horses.
Yep.
They can do some damage down the stretch in their careers, but it's not, they're not going to win the Kentucky Derby. At number 9, a horse we saw live last weekend, Mage, who almost pulled the big one on Forte as an upset at the Florida Derby, ran second, ran quality, ran strong, ran very impressively, only to be barely beaten by everybody else, or a consensus around the world's number 1.
Yeah.
So very, very close to winning that one and pulling the upset. Mage looking serious and also looking like still on the uptick, like maybe still getting better. So that's dangerous, maybe.
Absolutely. This is a horse that will only be going to his 4th career race when he goes to the Kentucky Derby. He won his first race. He won his maiden with a big speed figure, comes back, has a troubled trip in the Fountain of Youth, finishes 4th, then comes back, as you mentioned, and made the move, got the jump on Forte, actually. Got the jump on Forte, made the move first in that Florida Derby, and you thought, my gosh, here comes Mage, and Forte just, the class wins out, and it gets the job done there, but no disrespect, finishing second in that race, and he's a horse that, you got to like, I think, a little bit, because there's upside there. There's still room for improvement with a horse like Mage. Now, the one concern that you can point to with a horse like Mage is he's got some gate issue. He needs to get out of the gate a little bit better, which is kind of bizarre because he broke like a lightning bolt in his first race. Now he struggled out of the gate his last 2. So we'll see if they can get that cleaned up for the Gustavo Delgado barn. Those horses tend to get better with time, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not he can continue to progress. But I like the horse a lot.
And I know you can vouch for this because we were there live. When Mage made that move and blew by Forte and blew by the whole field on the outside, I thought Forte was done, dead in the water right there.
Yep.
I thought Mage had the race won. It was great. And Forte got home like the monster he is. So we'll see. But yeah, Mage did everything right. I think Mage has a shot on Kentucky Derby weekend. So let's move up. Number 8, Verifying. The Cox barn. Now I've been super high on him. I won't say we. I have been super high. Yeah. Both of us. A couple of the other people we won't mention on the channel. Not so much.
You can figure out who they are.
Yeah. So he ran second in the Bluegrass, a very close second.
Yep.
Very impressive. And this horse finally stepped up and did what we've kind of been thinking he was going to do all along.
Yeah.
And here comes Verifying. He runs the race of his life. He loses by a neck. Great effort.
Yeah.
This horse is live on Kentucky Derby Day, baby. And he's gonna get a little bit of a price because he's kind of falling into that a little bit under the radar category because he hasn't won. He hasn't won a big race yet. So I love him. This is my price on Derby Saturday. So spoiler alert.
Listen, here's the thing about Verifying is he should get a good trip in the Kentucky Derby because we've talked again about the lack of early speed in this race. He'll be forwardly placed and he should be in a good tactical position for this race. Now, the knock against him is he got that exact same setup in the Bluegrass and couldn't get the job done. Now, that might depend on your opinion of how good Tapit Trice is. If you think Tapit Trice is the best horse in this Derby field, spoiler alert, one of us does think that, and then finishing second to him by half a length is no knock at all. And you go, this is a really strong horse that he's going to stay out of trouble. He's not going to have a lot of traffic issues to deal with. He gets out of the gate cleanly. He's a horse that has some upside. So I like Verifying a lot as well. I think he's kind of a cut below with what I would consider the top contenders, but he's right there. And I agree with you. He's going to be a little bit of a price. And I like him to use him in some vertical exotics on Kentucky Derby Day for sure.
Yeah, and his loss by neck to Tapit Trice, both of those horses, again, spoiler alert, both of them are in my top 3. So that's how much I thought of that race there. So moving along, we're going to the Jeff Ruby Stakes champion, 2 fills at number 6.
Actually, we're going to go to Practical Move first.
Yeah, skipping over one. No respect on Practical Move. The Santa Anita Derby champion, Practical Move. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed emotions on Practical Move. I know he definitely belongs here in the top 10.
Yeah,
I have no qualms about that. He's a quality horse. He's done nothing wrong. I don't know that I kind of feel like what you just said about verifying. I'm not sure he's at the level of those next few, including verifying. I just don't know that he's elite. Go ahead.
Yeah, listen, I think it depends on what you think of the California circuit. It's obviously been a little bit weaker because the Baffert horses have not been running, and there have been a slew of medical issues with that, and obviously with him being suspended from entering horses in Kentucky Derby, etc. Yakteen, though, his trainer, Tim Yakteen, has done everything right with Practical Move. This is a horse that won the Los Alamitos Futurity as a 2-year-old, comes back from a long layoff, wins the San Felipe, comes back, goes 9 furlongs. A lot of people didn't think he could get 9 furlongs because of that Practical Joke sire up top, and gets the 9 furlongs. Now, a lot of people have noted this, and I saw it when I watched the replay of the race as well. He loves that inside rail trip. And at the Kentucky Derby, I don't know if he's getting that. And that's not an easy spot to get. And so he saves every inch of ground every single time he rides that, runs. So I think there are some questions. Can he get 10 furlongs now? And that might be a distance a little too far for him, because you already started to see Mandarin Hero and Skinner catching up to him at the end of that Santa Anita Derby. So going another little bit further, I think it's a problem. Now, that said, you look underneath on Practical Move, he's got the ability to run for days. The Dam was a 2-turn turf winner out of a Fleet Alex. So, who can run for days. So, there's some distance pedigree underneath if you want to use that angle. But, we should mention he's one of the few horses to pop a 100 plus buyer speed figure 2 times in this crop. So he's got speed. He should sit the right trip. Just a matter of whether or not he's got the distance.
Yeah, and obviously we'll be looking at post position draws and everything coming up here in the next couple of weeks for the Derby. But Practical Move, he's done enough. I get it. I get it if you're high on him. Number 6-2 fills. This is Matt's golden boy this year. Jeff Ruby Stakes champion. And this is a horse who's Grinder has won, has done everything right, looks great. Matt, I'm going to let you take this one away because this is your horse.
This is my boy. So he's number 3 on my list. And I love 2 fills. Here's a little factoid I shared with the group earlier today. Out of all of the 3-year-old colts running in the Kentucky Derby trail, as 3-year-olds, outside of California, which always has inflated speed figures, outside of California, only one 3-year-old has run a 100 plus buyer speed figure as a 3-year-old. That is 2 fills, who ran a 101 at the Jeff Ruby on that synthetic surface. But we saw Rich Strike go from that synthetic surface to win at Turfway Park last year. Unlike Rich Strike, 2 fills has shown the class. I mean, he's run big races. He's finished 2nd at Instant Coffee. He's finished 3rd in a couple of spots. He comes back, blows away the Jeff Ruby. What I love about him is that he's super tactical. He can sit whatever trip he needs to sit. Can he be on the lead? Absolutely. Can he be mid-pack? Yes. Can he be a deep closer? Yes. I absolutely love that from him. You're going to get a price on Derby Day. I love that Larry Ravelli's finally made it to the Derby. I love his jockey, Jareth Loveberry. And I'm just excited for this horse to run. I think you're going to get a big price. He is my this year's simplification in terms of a horse that I just think plugs away and is going to come in at a huge price in those vertical exotics. Really like this horse a lot.
He's going to be 20-1 too at that.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
We love it. All right, let's go. Top 5. Here we go. And there's some contention amongst the prophets here, but number 5, Kingsbarns, who I have in my top 5 for sure, coming off the Louisiana Derby win.
Yep.
Todd Pletcher's got 2 of the best in my opinion. Kingsbarns are the Uncle Mo sired horse here. What do we have here? Because I think I like Kingsbarns a little more than everybody else does, but again, not to be mistaken for those two horses coming off the bluegrass.
Yeah, listen, Kingsbarns, I think that Louisiana Derby was such a divisive race for some people because on one hand, they looked at it and they go, God, could you go any slower up front? I mean, he went so slow. Like I said, that 1:14.3 opening 6 furlongs.
Not his fault.
The thing is, no, it's not his fault. He got on the lead. He set the pace. Nobody pressured him. So why would he go fast?
Yeah.
And then when he was asked to move, he went. And he easily started pulling away from people. And nobody, despite going so slow, nobody could make up ground on him. So, I think it speaks to the lack of early speed in this race. He and Verifying should get good trips out on the front end. They should be able to set reasonable fractions. I think Kingsbarns absolutely a very legitimate threat here. And I think he's a very nice horse in the spot. And I just think, some people are going to overlook that Louisiana Derby a little bit or dismiss it. I think you're going to get a price on Kingsbarns come Derby Day.
Exactly. He's not real high on a lot of people's radar. I mean, I have him at 4, I believe, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And I think people were giving me shit about that because it was just like, how do you have him over the Japanese horse? So we'll get to in a second here. But
yeah,
I mean, again, like I really liked that horse a lot. And I think out of all these top 10 horses,
yeah,
Kingsbarns is the one we saw the least out of because he didn't have to do anything. He has not had to run yet. So the sky's the limit for him. I think he's a real threat to win because we haven't seen him pressured at all on the front or back end.
No, you're absolutely right. And we should also mention he's a little bit like Mage in that he's a super young horse that we just have not seen as a 2-year-old much either. And so he really just went kind of maiden allowance Louisiana Derby and has 100 points and is now going to go to the Kentucky Derby. So he's only running his 4th race too. Why can't he keep getting better? So, there's absolutely opportunity for progression from Kingsbarns. It's interesting. The more I think about him, the more I like him in this race. Yep. And he's a horse that I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we saw him, so I think people are falling victim to the "what have you done for me lately" type attitude, which I get it. But yeah, Kingsbarns, do not forget about that horse. Number 4, the Japanese horse, Derma Sotogake. Matt was blown away by the effort. I was blown away by the effort. Everybody was. But my question has been all along, who did he beat? We're not quite sure. Does it translate to the U.S.? All questions that are fair.
Yeah.
But all questions that could, the Japanese horses that we have seen come over have done quite well. So where are you at? You still think this horse could be a world beater?
I still think he could be. And I think that he is he's run against very, very good competition over in Japan. He ran them off their feet in the UAE Derby. Yeah. If nothing else, even if you go, well, I don't know who he beat, he looked like he could run 2 miles that day. I mean, that horse looked like he could keep running for days. So I'm not worried about the distance there. No. He's not naturally a front runner. That's the other thing is I know a lot of people saw him in that UAE Derby and just assumed, he's going to go to the lead every time. He's not naturally that horse. He can be, obviously, but he can sit mid-pack too. So he's got versatility. I like that out of him. Just to give people an update, he and Continue both arrived in Churchill Downs this week, and they are both out on the track getting used to the dirt. So they're going to be here for just about a month before the race, have plenty of opportunity to acclimate, get used to the track, get used to East Coast time, and be there. It will be interesting to see how a horse like Derma Sotogake reacts to his surroundings, but so far he doesn't seem to be a horse that's up on his toes. He doesn't seem to be a horse that's too high strung. So I think he can handle things at Churchill Downs well. And that's going to be a big test for a lot of these horses, but no reason to think he's not a very serious win threat here. And this could be the year that Japan wins the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that. It's going to be fun. Definitely an interesting spike into the, into the betting window too. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of people who are not going to know what to do with that horse, which is going to make for interesting betting. Because I think you might get like a more than fair price on him if you're sold.
Well, that's the thing.
Maybe 5-8 to 1, something like that. I mean,
No, I think that's the weird thing is I think in our little hive of horse racing Twitter, there's a lot of people who like Derma Sotogake, but you bring up a great point, El Hombre, which is when this goes to the general public, who's the people betting on the Kentucky Derby, they have no freaking clue who
No
Derma
clue.
Sotogake is. They haven't watched the UAE Derby. They don't know it. They just know Japanese horses never win. So why would they start putting money on it? So I think you'll have some wise guy people putting money on this horse, but I don't see this spreading out to the general public necessarily. So I agree with you. I think you'll end up getting a price.
At number 3, Tapit Trice. This is my pick to win, and it has been for a while. He finally got out of the gate halfway decent into bluegrass and got it done. Verifying gave him all he could handle.
Yep.
But so again, how good is Tapit Trice based on how good is Verifying, or how good is Verifying based on Tapit Trice? I happen to think they're both at the top of the field, right there with Forte and Angel of Empire. All these horses. I think this is going to be a very unbelievably good betting race because I think there's so much balance here, and I think Forte is going to end up taking the most money because of the fact he's done absolutely nothing wrong. He wins everything he's in front of. Where are you at on Tapit Trice? I know you've got questions.
Yeah, listen, my concern with Tapit Trice is always, that break is the issue. Now, he broke much better at the Bluegrass, and I thought Luis Saez did the absolute right thing, which was to make a middle move with him and to actually sneak up and get really close, much closer than he was coming down the backstretch, angled him out, got him in the clear, and came up and was sitting like 3rd or 4th, actually. And then had plenty in the tank coming for home. This is a horse that can absolutely run for days, will not have any issues with the distance. And I think you saw that with the Bluegrass in that he was able to exert energy on the backstretch and still have plenty to win in the home stretch. And I think that's really impressive. Typically, when a horse makes a middle move like that, they flatten out coming home for home. And he didn't do that. Yeah.
As a Tapit Trice supporter, I'm sitting there going, man, I hope that wasn't too much of a move.
Yeah. Yep.
And it didn't affect him at all.
Yep. No, it didn't. And I think the only thing that I would be worried about, obviously, if he draws to the inside, that's a concern in the Kentucky Derby in general for any horse. But I would say that Louis' ability to get him out in the clear and move him up down the backstretch is, I don't know if he'll be able to make that move. Just like we talked about, I don't know if Practical Move is going to be able to be on the inside rail. Like, he's going to need the right type of trip, and we'll see. But he's super talented, that's for sure, and he can run for days. So yeah, he's a legit win threat, a very legit win threat.
On to our top 2, Angel of Empire, coming off the Arkansas Derby. I think a lot of people were questioning how great that horse was until the Arkansas Derby.
Yep.
Went out there and got it done. Has done nothing wrong. The figures are there. Everything's there for Angel of Empire if you're a fan. Matt, where you at on Angel of Empire, number 2? High or low?
I'm probably lower than number 2. I think he's number 4 on my list, but he's up there certainly in this top 5, and I think a very, very legitimate threat. The thing about Angel of Empire, and you kind of you're starting to hear us talk about the same things. I know he can get the distance. That's the other thing. This horse loves the distance. So the more ground you give him, the better he's going to be. The 10 furlongs isn't an issue. He does come from the back a little bit, so you do wonder how effective is he going to be if there's not a super aggressive pace up front. But the fact that I know he can get the distance and I'm not sure about a lot of these other horses means he's going to be picking them off coming down the stretch for sure. And you're right. I think he answered a ton of questions in that Arkansas Derby. I like him a lot. I think he's a very, very legitimate live threat here.
All right. And then finally, let's cap it off with number 1, Forte, who I believe in our 3-year quick history on Trust the Profits, the only horse to ever run the table.
Yeah.
All the way from the Breeders' Cup juvenile all the way to the Kentucky Derby weekend, has never fallen out of the number 1 position. He's not on our number 1. He's not on all of our number 1 positions. Yeah. In fact, he's only number 1 on one of our lists.
This guy right here.
Yep. And but it tells you enough that he's either 2 or 3 on everybody else's list. He's 2 on mine. He is right there and has been the picture of consistency and greatness. That close at the Florida Derby, you make what you will of it, but that was super impressive. I thought he was dead going to the top of the stretch, and then I thought he was dead halfway down the stretch.
Yep.
And he made those giant strides and got home.
Yep.
Forte, number 1, and has been all season.
Yeah.
What more can you say?
No, it's hard to. It was so funny. I think this is funny that I ended up being the only one with him being number 1 because I've been the one that's actually moved him off the number 1 spot probably the most out of any of us throughout the Derby season. But consensus wise, you're right. He remained number 1 for us the whole time. And yeah, that Florida Derby was just so impressive. I mean, he just seems like a horse that just doesn't want to lose. He just refuses to lose. And you like to see that sort of test out of a horse, quite frankly. And I like to see horses that are battle tested. That stretch run with Loggins in the Breeders' Futurity. I mean, that's as good as it gets.
Ding.
And
check the if you're playing Colin Sheehan bingo at home, there it is.
We got the Loggins reference. And so, you know, and then that amazing close, obviously super impressive at the Florida Derby. The question for Forte will be, what type of trip does he sit? You know, he escaped that 11 post in the Florida Derby. What type of post does he get? But here's the thing. He's much like Two Phils, and he's a much better version, I think, of Two Phils, but he's super versatile. He can go to the lead. He can sit mid-pack. He can close from the back. He can do whatever he needs to do based upon the way the pace sets up, the post position he gets. He answers so many questions. He checks so many boxes. He's by far and away the most complete horse, I think, in this crop. Does that mean he's a shoo-in to win the Derby? Absolutely not. But he's the horse that I have the least number of questions about. And I think that's why he's my number one, personally.
Yep, and I can't fault anybody for putting him at number one. He's been a rock star since day one.
Yep.
Matt, let's close this thing out, baby. We've gone long. Thanks everybody for joining this impromptu live, and we're gonna post this as a video for everybody to take a look at later too. So, thanks everybody for joining. Please subscribe. We'll be back throughout this Derby prep season now that it's just about done with the Lexington coming this weekend. But we have tons of content to go to hopefully help you make up your mind on who to pick out of this tough crop of 3-year-olds. It's going to be a tough betting race, but that means if you've got a strong opinion, then you can make some money this year, baby. All right. Thank you, Matt. Peace out, everybody.